Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back, history enthusiasts, to another gripping episode of the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Today, we're diving into a pivotal moment in North American history, the Siege of Fort William Henry. It's a tale of ambition, strategy, and tragedy that played a significant role in the broader tapestry of the French and Indian War.
Oh, absolutely, Marco. And before we march into the heart of the battle, let's set the scene for our listeners. The mid-18th century was a time of empire building and global conflict. The powers of Europe were battling it out across the world, and North America became one of their battlegrounds.
Right you are, Chuck. The French and British empires were at loggerheads, each vying for control over the lucrative fur trade and territorial supremacy. Their Native American allies also played a crucial role in the unfolding drama, each side aligning with the European power that promised the best opportunities for their own survival and prosperity.
Before we delve into the heart of the siege, let's paint a broader picture of the world stage during the mid-18th century. This was a time when empires were expanding, seeking new territories, and engaging in conflicts that spanned continents. The European powerhouses of the day, notably Britain and France, were locked in a struggle for global dominance, which played out in North America as part of their wider conflict.
That's right, Chuck. In North America, this period is marked by what we call the French and Indian War, which itself was part of a much larger conflict known as the 7 Years' War. This was essentially the world's first real world war, with battles raging in Europe, Africa, India, and, of course, the Americas.
And in the backdrop of this global chess game, we see a landscape of alliances that would make your head spin. The British were not only fighting the French but also contending with various Native American tribes, each with their own interests and allegiances. The French, on their part, had done a remarkable job of cultivating relationships with many of these tribes, using them as effective allies against British expansion.
The stage for our story, Fort William Henry, was a British outpost situated strategically at the southern end of Lake George in New York. Its location was key for controlling access to the upper reaches of the Hudson River Valley and acted as a bulwark against French movement southward from Canada. The fort was part of a chain of British defences intended to protect the colonies from French incursions and to assert British dominance in the contested regions.
And overseeing this bastion of British might was Lieutenant Colonel George Monro, a figure whose leadership and decisions during the siege would become subjects of much debate and discussion. On the opposite side, the French forces were commanded by General Louis-Joseph de Montcalm, a seasoned veteran known for his tactical acumen and his ability to work effectively with the diverse Native American allies.
The build-up to the siege was characterized by a series of skirmishes and smaller battles throughout the region, as both sides jockeyed for position and advantage. The French aimed to cut off British access to the interior, while the British sought to fortify their positions and extend their reach deeper into territory claimed by France and its allies.
It's important to understand that this conflict was not just a military one but also a battle for the hearts and minds of the indigenous populations. Both France and Britain sought to secure alliances through diplomacy, trade, and sometimes intimidation.
As tensions escalated, the fate of Fort William Henry became increasingly significant. It was not just a military target but a symbol of British resolve in the face of French aggression. Its fall would have wide-reaching implications, not just for the immediate region, but for the overall balance of power in North America.
With this backdrop, the stage was set for a confrontation that would resonate through history. The Siege of Fort William Henry wasn't just a battle, it was a moment that encapsulated the complexities of colonial warfare, the ambitions of empires, and the struggle of indigenous peoples caught between the tides of history.
And as we'll see, the events that unfolded around Fort William Henry would have repercussions far beyond its walls, influencing diplomatic strategies, military tactics, and the very fabric of North American society for years to come.
As the summer of 1757 approached, the air around Lake George was thick not just with the humidity of the season but with the tension of impending conflict. The French, under General Montcalm, amassed a formidable force, combining seasoned troops from France with a diverse array of Native American warriors. Their target, Fort William Henry, a linchpin in the British defense strategy.
Montcalm's strategy was multifaceted. He knew that a direct assault on the well-fortified position would result in heavy casualties, so he opted for a siege, aiming to cut off the fort from any hope of reinforcement or resupply. His forces began by establishing positions around the fort, effectively encircling it and laying the groundwork for a prolonged siege.
Inside the fort, Lieutenant Colonel George Monro faced a dire situation. His garrison was composed of British regulars, colonial militia, and some Native American allies, a total force significantly outnumbered by Montcalm's encircling army. Despite the odds, Monro was determined to hold the fort, hoping for reinforcements from General Webb, who was stationed with a considerable force just a few miles away at Fort Edward.
However, those hopes would be dashed. Communication between Fort William Henry and Fort Edward was severely hampered by French and Native American patrols. The few messengers who did make it through painted a bleak picture of the situation, but assistance from Webb was not forthcoming, primarily due to his overestimation of the French forces and a reluctance to engage.
Meanwhile, Montcalm's forces began their bombardment, a relentless assault that tested the resolve and the resources of the British defenders. Cannons and mortars fired day and night, not just aiming to breach the fort's defenses but also to wear down the morale of its inhabitants.
And amidst the thunder of artillery, the defenders of Fort William Henry worked tirelessly to repair damage, treat the wounded, and return fire. Supplies began to dwindle, and the situation grew increasingly desperate. Despite these hardships, there were acts of incredible bravery. Soldiers and civilians alike showed remarkable resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds.
One poignant example was the actions of a young colonial militiaman who, under the cover of darkness, managed to sneak through French lines to bring back a small but vital cache of gunpowder. Such acts of heroism provided fleeting moments of hope within the besieged fort.
As the siege wore on, it became clear that the situation was unsustainable. Montcalm, aware of the fort's dwindling resources and hoping to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, sent a messenger under a flag of truce, offering honorable terms for surrender. Monro, facing starvation, a lack of ammunition, and the prospect of a final, overwhelming assault, was forced to consider this proposal.
After much deliberation and with the welfare of his garrison foremost in his mind, Monro agreed to negotiate. The terms laid out by Montcalm were generous for the time, promising safe passage for the garrison back to British lines, with the condition that they would not take up arms against the French for a period of 18 months.
The decision to surrender was not made lightly. Monro knew it meant the loss of a strategic position and a blow to British prestige. However, the alternative was the destruction of his force and a greater loss of life. With heavy hearts, the British prepared to leave Fort William Henry, marking the end of the siege but not the end of the story, as the events that followed would etch this episode into the annals of history with a stark reminder of the complexities and brutalities of war.
With the siege concluded, the stage was set for a tragic aftermath that would overshadow the military maneuvers and strategic decisions that led to the fall of Fort William Henry.
The morning after the surrender agreement was signed, a somber mood enveloped Fort William Henry. The British and their allies prepared to vacate, expecting to march under the terms of their honourable surrender. However, the reality of their departure would unfold with unforeseen tragedy and controversy that would mark one of the darker chapters of the French and Indian War.
Indeed, Marco. Despite General Montcalm's assurances for a safe passage, tensions simmered among his Native American allies. They felt cheated out of the spoils of war, a customary part of their participation in such conflicts. They had expected to claim weapons, ammunition, and perhaps even captives, traditional rights of conquest that were denied by the terms of surrender Montcalm had negotiated.
As the British and their colonial militia began their march towards Fort Edward, under the supposed protection of French troops, chaos erupted. Groups of Native American warriors, dissatisfied and spurred by a sense of betrayal, attacked the retreating column. The ensuing violence was brutal and indiscriminate, with soldiers, women, and children among the British and colonial ranks falling victim.
The French forces, caught off guard by the ferocity and rapidity of the attack, struggled to restore order. General Montcalm and his officers intervened personally, risking their own lives to protect the surrendered garrison. Despite their efforts, the damage was done. The event spiraled into a massacre, leaving a lasting stain on the French victory and dramatically illustrating the complexities of the alliances within this war.
The aftermath of the siege and the subsequent attack had far-reaching implications. News of the massacre spread quickly, igniting outrage among the British and colonial public. It bolstered the British military recruitment efforts, as tales of the tragedy stoked a desire for retribution against both the French and their Native American allies.
The incident also highlighted the fragile nature of alliances with Native American tribes, whose motivations and expectations could significantly diverge from those of their European allies. For the French, the massacre at Fort William Henry became a diplomatic headache, complicating their relations with Native American groups and tarnishing their reputation as honorable military opponents.
On the strategic front, the fall of Fort William Henry and the subsequent massacre did not immediately alter the course of the war. However, it served as a catalyst for a renewed British military effort in the colonies. The outrage and the desire for revenge contributed to a more unified colonial response, which, in the following years, would play a crucial role in the British strategy and eventual successes.
Yet, amidst the horror and the political fallout, there were stories of individual heroism and humanity. Accounts of French soldiers and officers, including Montcalm himself, who went to great lengths to protect their defeated foes, offered a glimmer of chivalry in an otherwise dark episode. These acts of bravery and compassion remind us that even in the midst of war, there are moments of shared humanity that transcend conflict.
The siege of Fort William Henry and its aftermath remind us of the complexities of war, the intertwining of honor, strategy, and tragedy. It's a reminder of the human cost of empire building and the unpredictable nature of alliances in a time of global conflict.
As the dust settled on the shores of Lake George, the legacy of Fort William Henry began to take shape, etching itself into the collective memory of a nation yet to be fully born. The siege and its violent aftermath resonate through history, not just as a tale of military confrontation, but as a complex narrative of cultural collision, strategic ambition, and the stark realities of colonial warfare.
Indeed, Chuck. The events at Fort William Henry offer a microcosm of the larger struggles of the French and Indian War, encapsulating the alliances, betrayals, and the multifaceted nature of conflict in the 18th century. But beyond the tactical and political implications, the siege has seeped into the cultural bedrock, influencing perceptions of the war and the colonial era.
Perhaps the most enduring legacy of Fort William Henry is its portrayal in literature and popular culture. James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohicans immortalized the siege, blending historical fact with fiction in a way that captivated generations and shaped American folklore. Cooper's narrative, while not entirely accurate, underscored the heroism, tragedy, and complexity of the American frontier.
The story of Fort William Henry also serves as a poignant reminder of the human cost of empire and conflict. The siege, the negotiations for surrender, and the subsequent massacre underscore the unpredictable nature of war and the importance of leadership and diplomacy. Montcalm's attempts to protect the surrendered garrison, despite the tragic outcome, highlight moments of honor and humanity amidst the brutality of war.
On a broader scale, the siege underscores the strategic significance of fortifications in North American colonial warfare. Fort William Henry's fall demonstrated the vulnerabilities of frontier defenses and the importance of supply lines, communication, and local alliances. These lessons would be absorbed and adapted in later conflicts as the struggle for control over North America continued.
The echoes of Fort William Henry remind us of the complexities of history, of stories written not just by the victors, but by the voices of all those who lived, fought, and died in these pivotal moments. It's a call to look beyond the simplified narratives and explore the rich tapestry of human experience that shapes our understanding of the past.
As we reflect on the siege and its lasting impact, we're reminded that history is not just about events that happened, it's about the stories we tell and the lessons we learn. And as you, our valued listeners, continue to join us on these explorations, we hope to uncover more stories, delve into more mysteries, and celebrate the richness of our shared past.
And with that, we'd like to thank you all for tuning into the History AI podcast. Your support is what makes this journey through time possible. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and share our podcast. Each review helps us grow and reach new listeners interested in the untold stories of history.
Don't forget, our podcast is evergreen, so whether you're listening today or years from now, these stories remain as fascinating and relevant as ever. Also, be sure to check out our merchandise, links are in the show notes. Wearing our gear is a great way to support the show and show off your love for history. And as a thank you to our listeners, we're offering a 10% discount on your first purchase. Just use the code TheHistoryAI Podcast, all one word, at checkout.
Lastly, we love hearing from you. Suggest topics through social media and join our community of history enthusiasts. Together, let's keep exploring the depths of our past.
Until next time, keep the past alive and remember, history is not just about the dates and facts, it's about understanding the human experience that connects us all. Looking for the perfect way to show appreciation for the incredible mom in your life? Discover Exhausted Moms, a coloring journey to relaxation and humor, the coloring book that speaks directly to the heart of motherhood. Gift her an escape into pages of laughter, empowerment, and moments of tranquility. With Exhausted Moms, she'll find a blend of whimsical illustrations and inspiring quotes that celebrate her daily triumphs and challenges. Crafted with love from images I created for the mother of my children, each page offers a space for creativity and relaxation, a reminder that she's doing an amazing job, even on the toughest days. Give the gift of laughter, peace, and recognition. Exhausted Moms isn't just a coloring book, it's a hug, a nod of understanding, and a token of appreciation for everything she does. Surprise her with Exhausted Moms today and watch her face light up with joy. Because every mom deserves a moment to herself, wrapped in the colors of love and support.